Inside the Birds is back. What's up, everybody? It's Geoff Mosher, and pinch hitting for our buddy Adam Kaplan is our friend from InsideTheBirds.com, Andrew DiCecco. Cappy is traveling at the time of us recording this, Andrew DiCecco, somewhere probably around flyover country as he makes his way to Las Vegas to participate in Radio Row activities. And it reminds me, Andrew, and I'm sure you probably had the same feeling, and I follow you on Twitter, as everybody does, at Andrew DiCecco. This time last year, we were doing the same thing, getting ready, our experience on Radio Row. That was a really fun time, just grabbing people, interviewing them. Jason Avant would sit in with us, Greg
Yeah.
Cosell would sit in. I mean, we would literally just be like, hey, wow, look, Marcus Smith, come on in, tell us about it. LeGarrette Blunt, come on in.
My
How you
favorite
doing?
memory, and you have to tell the listeners this, you thought you saw Andy Reid walking down there.
Oh man. So I think most people now, because the Chiefs have been to a couple Super Bowls here in the last few years, know that there is a guy, an Andy Reid impersonator, who really does look. I mean, he's this is what he does now. I mean, he's about the same size, same frame, the bushy walrus mustache, cuts his hair the same way, wears the clothes, wears the hat, and this guy who is a total Andy Reid doppelganger, like a professional now. Every time you see him, he almost seems to add a little bit more to his Andy Reid game. And this time last year, he had that gait. Andy sort of limps a little bit on that knee, right?
Yeah.
So you and I,
You and I were talking, and you nudged me because he gave you a point, and you said, "Hey, man, there's Andy Reid." And I was like, "Wait, why would Andy Reid be here?"
the funny thing is, as I'm pointing back and nudging you, I realize, you ever have that, you catch yourself in the moment realizing you're getting duped, but it's too late.
Yeah.
So as he points back and gives me the wink, and by the way, the same exact way Big Red has that same kind of point and wink. As he's doing that, I'm just thinking, oh no, if this were 10 years earlier, like Ashton Kutcher would be jumping out and we'd all be punked and everything, and I would have been the butt of the joke. But I think we were actually live streaming at the
we,
time
we we
too.
definitely were. It was a fine memory that didn't hit me until today when I was looking through the photos. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. And of course, I ran into Brett Michaels for Poison, and I mean, we just got so many great guests, man. That was an incredible experience being able to cover a Super Bowl.
Yeah, yeah. I think of you running into Brett Michaels and knowing how big of an 80s like hairband metal fan you are. And I was trying to think. I was actually thinking about it when I saw that picture you tweeted, of like, who would that have been for me? Like, who would I have run into where I would have been like, holy cow, I got to get a picture of this
The
person.
lead
I'm not
the
sure.
lead singer of Depeche Mode, probably.
Nah, I like Depeche Mode, but not. I don't stand them that way. Um, I don't know. I don't know who it would be. I don't know if it would be a singer. I don't know if it'd be like a movie star. I don't know if it'd be like I don't know. I'm kind of nerdy. I don't have that too many outside interests. So, and it wouldn't be like an athlete because I'm just, you and I are used to being around professional
Yeah,
athletes,
yeah.
famous athletes now. So I don't know. I'll have to, maybe by the end of the show, I'll be like, if it were this person, that would be the guy. I don't know. Wouldn't be a politician, I don't think. I don't know. It's a really good question. Like, who would I have like said I need to get my picture taken with? That would be pretty interesting. All right,
Yeah,
we got a
think
lot.
on that.
What's that?
Think on that.
I will think on that. I will. We got a lot to talk about in this episode, so we're going to do a couple things. We're going to talk about some of the newer, and God bless the Eagles for spacing this out. The way the reports go and the way we get information. The latest additions to the Eagles coaching staff. We're going to get into some of the work that you're doing on InsideTheBirds.com. You have some interesting stories coming up, and also you have your first mock draft 1.0, the highly anticipated Andrew DiCecco 1.0 mock draft came out. We'll get into a little bit of your reasoning behind that. And I also want to do a little bit of a Super Bowl conversation that might fold into the conversation we're going to have about the Eagles coaching staff and
Mhm.
some of their additions. So we got all that to talk about on this episode of Inside the Birds, which is, of course, brought to you by our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. It is the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. The season is over, Andrew, as you know, but we are in heavy rotation here on the phones, talking to people, trying to figure out the direction that the franchise is going after a pretty epic collapse. I don't think we've had you on. I know we've had you on recently, but you've seen some stuff in your day, just growing up watching the Eagles and then as a professional. But in my close to 20 years covering the team, I've seen good Eagles teams, I've seen bad Eagles teams, and I have seen some of those like up and down teams, but I can't remember a team that just, looked one way after 11 games and then totally the opposite way. And I know you spent a lot of time talking to the players and getting a vibe in the locker room, but now that we're sort of a couple of weeks removed from it, what's your takeaway from that season?
It was odd. I'd never experienced anything like it. I've never seen anything like it. A team that could look, well, let's face it, they didn't look dominant. Their record was 10-1 at that point, but the way that they were winning, I mean, you knew that you're waiting for that other shoe to drop, because winning by the skin of your teeth against teams like the Commanders and falling to a team like the Jets, I think in each of those, in that win and loss for that instance, it exploited different things about this team. And it was only a matter of time before you faced an upper echelon team like the 49ers, where they're going to exploit that. And I mean, it was on tape. They set the blueprint and they weren't able to overcome it. So you and I have texted about this. That Christmas Day win that they had, walking into that locker room was about as it was awkward and tense. Like you wouldn't be able to sort of tell whether they won or lost if you didn't know otherwise. And I think that what it was is that that wasn't a pretty game, and they knew that the playoffs were on the horizon. And it's sort of tough. It's sort of tough to bask in the glow of a win when you know difficult games are coming up, and you know you might not be able to go toe to toe with some of those teams that you need to go against. So it was just a big collapse. I am adamant about this. I don't think it was a lack of buy-in in any stretch. I agree with what you and Adam were saying, that sort of you get caught in that malaise if you're a player and you don't have a lot of leaders with conviction in terms of coaching. You're not believing in that. But I don't once ever think that they laid down. I think that one of the reasons why Nick Sirianni is back is because they showed a commitment to their head coach.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Verbally, at least they did. Right. I agree. I don't think that they gave up by any stretch of the means. I think that they were a very confused, discombobulated team that didn't know how to get its act together. And now it is Howie Roseman's job, along with the coaches, to get the roster together. As you mentioned, even at 10-1, there were a lot of issues that cracks in the foundation that were going to surface, that did surface in the San Francisco and the Dallas game. I like that you point out the phenomenon that us reporters get very accustomed to. Um, the phenomenon I call, you celebrate any win no matter what. That's what you hear. No matter how ugly, it's hard to win in the fill in the blank. NFL, MLB, whatever. It's hard to win, right? You always hear from the players. So that day that they won the game against the Giants on Christmas, and a day of joy, right? And you walk into the locker room, and you had told me that that was a very tense locker room. I remember thinking, that may be the first go against the grain type of experience that I've ever, known of a team just not feeling that a win is a win. So that was very telltale right there. So we'll talk about that this offseason, this coaching staff moves. Of course, Adam and I are doing a lot on Patreon as well. We're going to have our next Ask ITB live stream. Andrew, these things have been, we've had like 15 people on our live stream, sometimes more, just getting their questions in, getting their complaints, their comments. It's been like a neighborhood bar feel on the Ask ITB live stream. So we'll do our next one.
I've done one with Adam. I think it
That's
was
right.
around Halloween, and I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of knowledgeable folks on there, and it was some good discourse for sure.
Definitely. So next Wednesday at 8 o'clock p.m., which will be the Wednesday after the Super Bowl. So we'll have a lot to discuss on there. We'll also have some announcements coming soon about some off-season programming and additions to our Patreon channel. That's patreon.com/inside the birds. If you want to become a member, I want to welcome all of our new members. And on insidethebirds.com, Andrew, I want you to tell our listeners about this. You have a couple of stories coming up on the website. Who have you caught up with and what are you going to be writing about?
Well, one, as you know, Jeff, as I do every year, I'm going to do my small school standouts piece. So I'll outline about 5 players that aren't necessarily getting the attention that they warrant, and that's always a fun piece to write to spread awareness. But I had a chance to catch up with former offensive coordinator Brad Childress, who, if any of the listeners have grown up through the Andy Reid era, they're well aware of who Brad Childress is. He oversaw Donovan McNabb's development as a quarterbacks coach. He worked with Andy Reid back in 1986 when they were with the Northern Arizona, when they were coaching at Northern Arizona. So there's a lot of history there. So I talked to Brad about his relationship with Andy Reid, the evolution of the NFL offense, because the last 10 years of his career, he was more of an analyst. So he got to see a lot and see the spread and see Andy evolve with the time. So I thought that was interesting. And then of course, I asked him about Veterans Stadium and that, which he referred to as a bomb shelter. And, it was a really good conversation. And I definitely enjoyed it.
Yeah, now Chili
So
would be.
I'll be putting that together for Thursday,
Mhm.
and the small school piece, which I'm looking forward to as well.
All right, so Chili will be out on Thursday. That'll be tomorrow for our viewers. Looking forward to that. Now he not only was he Andy's quarterbacks coach, he then I believe became offensive coordinator, right,
Mm-hmm.
for Andy for a little bit, and then he got a head coaching job for the Vikings. And by year 2 or 3, they trade for Favre and they go to the
Yeah,
AFC Championship game. They're actually winning that game at halftime, if I recall. But then was not where they weren't able to finish the deal. And then that was sort of like the last you heard of Chili. I think he had gotten
yeah,
fired the next year and he kind
yeah.
of
And then he
faded
went. He
away.
was like an OC. I mean, if you look, he coached for over 40 years, and he went to Cleveland as an OC.
Right.
He was tight with Matt Nagy, so he was with him in Chicago and Kansas City. Well, he was co-offensive coordinator with him in Kansas City, and then he went with him as an analyst to the Bears. That was his last coaching job. But man, some really good conversations with Brad. Talked to him on a multitude of subjects that I'm looking forward to putting together.
I think of Andy's coordinators, offensive coordinators throughout his tenure, and the ones that jump out to me are Chili, Pat Shermer, and Marty Morningweg. And you couldn't find three more, I guess, different personalities, and yet all three of them, I would also say, you might come away with a conversation thinking that's kind of a unique cat right there. He thinks on a different wavelength. I think
Yes,
Shermer might be the one that like I had the most normal-ish conversations with, and Marty and Chili could get you going. Like, how long did you talk to Childress for? Because I feel like he could pull you in
I had I
300
had
different directions.
I had two 30-minute chats with him
Oh boy.
over the past week, and he remembered you. He remembered you. Yeah,
Oh,
I
great.
said I worked with Geoff Mosher. You may remember he was on the beat in 2005, and that was his last season there. And he goes, "Oh yeah, sure."
That could have
So
been one
yeah,
of those. Yeah, sure.
so I mean, very interesting cat, like you said, and definitely going a lot of different directions and knowledgeable offensive mind, I would say.
Definitely a good offensive mind. Hey, everybody, all of them have worked under Andy R. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes as well. All right, so we'll look for the Brad Childress, we'll call it the trilogy here on InsideTheBirds.com, and I'm sure you got into a lot of good stuff, a lot of good offensive concepts with Childress. So look forward to that, and then in the future they get the small school prospects to watch, and then pretty soon, man. I mean, I know we still got free agency, right? We still got the combine, but can't wait. I'm already looking forward to 2.0 mock draft and then all of your draft coverage that everybody has come to really respect and appreciate on InsideTheBirds.com. I don't think anybody gets more like Twitter is a toxic or X is a very toxic place that I don't like to hang out in too long. I like to post and get out, but I do see the comments and the feedback that you get for and people really appreciate how thorough you are and how objective you are. It's not like you just, I like this guy for that. I mean, you really give great detail and breakdown. And for those of our listeners or viewers who are just new to the platform and new to you, I'll just tell them that I know that there are talent evaluators, there are agents who are looking to find their next players to prospects to represent that talk to you a lot and get your opinion. That's how respected you are. So that's a testament to you, my friend, and we're always
Thank
happy
you.
to have you here on Inside the Birds.
Absolutely, and they're fun to put together. They the way I do it, it takes a while because I do put some thought into it and try to rationalize my decisions and make it realistic, right? Like you're not seeing a day three guy you're putting in the second round or anything like that. Like there's a lot of thought that goes into it. So I'm glad that people appreciate it. I got a little bit of grief on the first round pick, but we'll get into that later. But there's certainly a reasoning for it.
Yeah, no, but you and I have that same like look, like you do it the right way because there are people absorb mock drafts and there are thousands of them and many of them done by I want to say like legitimate people in the industry, whose job is to either know teams or know prospects. And every time someone of good name recognition comes out with a mock draft and puts a linebacker in the first round for the Eagles because they say this is going to be the year, it's about time, they really need one. You and I look at each other, and it's like this person has been working in NFL for 20 years, or they know what the Eagles do, and they still mock the linebacker to the Eagles or the running back to the Eagles. Last year, Bijan Robinson, and we look at each other and we're like, what? How do they not get it?
Well, they want to get the, hey, man, that's a home run. They want to get the good feedback.
Right. No, we don't do it for the feedback here at Inside the Bear. We do it for the reality and what we know. So good work by
Yeah.
you on that. All right, let's take a quick break to hear from our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
All right, the big news surrounding the Eagles is not only did they add a coach, Andrew, but they added a road game that's going to actually be a home game, and it's not going to be played on American soil. The Eagles are going to open up the 2024 NFL season in Brazil. So I think that fans are sort of split on this. Some think it's a really cool thing until they probably went on whatever airline's website and looked at how much it costs to get from wherever they live to Brazil. But some will make the trip. It'll be cool for experience. It'll be good for storylines. I know some beat writers who travel are really uber excited about it. And then there others are going to be disappointed by missing a home game. Now, remember, the Eagles were going to have 9 home games this coming season anyway, so it's a little bit like a cheat because of the new change in the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
But your thoughts on the Eagles opening up the season on a Friday night in Brazil?
Well, I like it personally, but I can understand why there's a lot of folks that maybe are torn on that because you lose a home game. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of excitement with it being week one, turn the page on a fresh season, and you don't get a chance to be in the city absorbing the atmosphere and the excitement that usually comes with the dawn of a new season. So I can certainly understand that school of thought. But man, I mean that's pretty cool playing in Brazil for the first week of the season. For the Eagles, you get to get out and maybe it's for the best, right? I mean, I don't know. Coming off that skid, coming and playing at home, the first sign of adversity could be a little rough. I think maybe going out on the road, hopefully you play an inferior opponent if you're the Eagles, and then you get that win, then you sort of ease your way into the season. So it may be good from their perspective. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly interesting, and it sort of drums up some excitement as you move towards week one.
Funny you should mention the matchup. Maybe they play an inferior opponent. I'm going to go out on well, I could be wrong about this, but I don't think it's going to be an NFC East game. Would you agree with that? That they're not going to
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. They're not going to take a home game away from the Eagles against the Cowboys, the Giants, or the Commanders. I can't imagine that happens. So if you look at their 5 other home opponents that should be playing them this year in their home, the Eagles' home, you're not finding a whole lot of layups there, right? You got the Browns. They were in the playoffs this year. The Steelers are always in the playoffs. The Packers are an upcoming team. The
That's what I
Jags
think it
missed.
might be. I think it might be Green Bay.
Yeah, you know what? I was thinking that exact same thing. The other angle, I mean, Jaguars, it could be like Doug Peterson versus his old team. I don't know if that's a whole lot of juice. And then the last would be the Falcons. So they open up the year against the Falcons to start the Nick Sirianni era in Atlanta. I don't know if the Eagles, especially with the Falcons going with Raheem Morris and not like, Bill Belichick or Jim Harbaugh or anything like that. I love the hire. I just, it's not splashy compared to those two. I don't know if they want to like open the season right with Eagles versus Falcons. I think you hit it on the head. I think Eagles Packers is the game. Maybe Eagles Steelers, if not the Packers, but either one of those two teams. I hope it's the Packers. I think that would be a fantastic opening night showcase for the league, don't you think? Just
Yeah,
the
you look
star
at
power there, the Jordan Love story and all
Jordan
that.
Love's trajectory
Yeah,
and the direction that team's headed. A lot of young offensive playmakers on both sides. A lot of offense, I would imagine, on the scoreboard. That would make a lot of sense to me.
sure, sure. All right, so we'll see when they announce the schedule who it is play. But you and I, we got our money on the Packers, and if not the Packers, my second one would be Steelers. Do you have a different second? Like, do you think it would be somebody else?
Jacksonville.
Jacksonville? Okay, let's see that maybe.
Oh,
The
only
only thing
only
is, no, no, no,
because
no,
it
no,
does.
no, nope. We got to rule out Jacksonville because they play too many games in London for
Oh,
them to
true.
be
Okay.
sent.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm gonna say Atlanta.
Atlanta. Okay,
Yeah, and
okay.
certainly not the Panthers, but I'll say Atlanta, just given the fresh regime there
Mm-hmm.
and the offensive juggernaut that you might have potentially with Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, then you have Jalen Hurts, Devontae, AJ, and so on.
Good point.
Could be something worth watching.
Definitely good point. Now they are playing the Panthers, but that's on the road this year, I believe,
That's
right?
a road one.
I thought it was. Did I have that wrong? I'll give a quick glimpse of the schedule here.
I thought
The
they
Carolina
had the
No,
Panthers at
you're right.
home.
I'm sorry. I made a mistake. So the Panthers could be a team as well, but man, that would shock me. Like you said, definitely not the Panthers. Would you
Mm-mm.
expect that game to be? All right, let's get into the coaching hire. The Eagles are bringing in a defensive backs coach, which we knew when DK McDonald leaving, and yet another person, Andrew, who has a connection, a direct connection to Vic Fangio. Christian Parker will be the defensive backs coach. So now they've got their secondary rounded out. Joe Casper is going to coach the safeties, and you imagine as the defensive backs coach that Christian Parker is going to be coaching the cornerbacks. That's what I believe he was coaching with the Broncos for the last 3 years. Before that, he spent 2 years in Green Bay as a defensive quality control guy. But if you look at Christian Parker, he falls in line with Joe Casper, Clint Hurt. These are all coaches who they don't run the Fangio scheme like we've had with Jonathan Gannon or Sean Desai. They have coached under Vic Fangio. What is your takeaway on that?
Well, I really like both hires. To be honest with you, they're both fast rising head coach or fast rising position coaches. Christian Parker is probably going to have an elevated role because I mean that's what some of the reports are, and he had a couple of defensive coordinator opportunities, some looks in the offseason with Green Bay and the Patriots. A nice pedigree of developing corners there in Denver. I think that a lot of their young players have really taken a big step forward under his tutelage. And then Joe Casper, as one source explained to me, he's a smart coach who will explain his assignments in great detail. So, in terms of communication or lapses, which the Eagles were prone to last year, I think that right there could be a key in alleviating some of that. They're also really young, right? I think Joe Casper is about 30, Parker's 32. That might help from a relatability standpoint, especially when you have an older coordinator and Vic Fangio. I think that might help with some of the younger defensive backs, help them acclimate and absorb their scheme and different sort of their ideologies, I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting on Casper. He is young, and last year was his first year leading a room. He was the safeties coach for the
Mm-hmm.
Miami Dolphins, and he was with the Eagles before that, as we all know. The Eagles liked him. He was not a guy that Vic brought to the Eagles. He was a guy that was an Eagle. Vic spent 2 years ago with the Eagles, got to know their personnel, got to know Jonathan Gannon, got to know Casper, and liked him enough to take him over to Miami. Miami is now reshuffling the deck there, and that gives the Eagles the opportunity to bring a guy back with a year of leading a room under his belt. And so when I look at this, and I don't want to be disparaging to the past Eagle staff, whether it was Sean Desai, whether it was DK McDonald, whether it was DJ Elliott, the linebackers
Sure.
coach. We know the Eagles are going to bring in a linebackers coach. Even Tracy Rocker. Tracy Rocker has been with the team since Nick Sirianni hired him first year. But Tracy Rocker came to the Eagles with, I think he had been with the Titans for a year, but he was mostly known as a college coach. He had not had a ton of NFL coaching experience. In fact, yeah, he was the defensive line coach with the Titans from 2011 to 2013, but every other year he was with a college team since 1994. So
Wow.
he, yeah. So the point here is what jumps out to me about this staff that Vic Fangio has put together is that you're not worried about the messaging. They've all coached under Vic Fangio. They all know what he wants to do, right? You're not worried about inexperience. Each of them have already led a room. Christian Parker just spent a couple years leading a room. Casper just led a room in Miami. And Clint Hurt, I mean, my God, he's led a room. Okay, I mean, the man, as soon as he walks into a room, he's leading a room. That's how big and imposing he is. But no, seriously, he was just a defensive coordinator last year, and he's been a long time defensive coach. When you think about the Eagles last year, Andrew, you use words like discombobulated, disjointed. You wondered about the coaching, the messaging, how it was received. You wondered about Sean Desai working with some guys that he brought in, like he brought in the Nickelbacks coach, who I don't even know if he's going to be with the team going further. And I think he brought in
Williams, right?
Ronell Williams. I can't remember if he brought in Tabor Johnson or if it was a Sirianni thing. But the point is, Vic Fangio is here. You're not getting the archetype. You're getting the guy architect, right? And then you're getting his proteges. There shouldn't be mixed messaging. The tone from OTAs to training camp, the coaching, the philosophy, it should be trickled down to the players. We know there are going to be new players, and you're not worried about all the things you saw under Sean Desai, and then got worse when you had another play caller trying to call Sean Desai's scheme. And you look back on it and you just wonder, 2 years ago, the Eagles defense was good because you had Jonathan Gannon in year 2, right? You had Denard Wilson still there. Like the messaging and the coaching was the same. Nick Rallis had proven to be a good linebackers coach. And then as soon as they lost these guys, they had to replace them piecemeal style. We're going to grab you from here, grab you from there. It does feel like more of an adult in the room conversation now, and a defensive staff that should always be, they should be on the same page as soon as phase 2 or whatever starts, when coaches can deal with their players.
Yeah, I mean, you laid that out very nicely. And I think like you said, you're getting an adult in the room, someone who's going to command respect, just given their track record and sustained success at the pro level. Whereas last year, you mentioned DK McDonald never ran a room. DJ Elliott never ran a room. I mean, the players, or in some cases, are probably older than the coaches in that room, and they just didn't have the resume. And it was the word that I used all season was disjointed. You saw just communication lapses all the time from veteran players as well, and it just didn't. They couldn't marry the coverage and the pass rush. It was just a mess. I think all that's going to be alleviated. Now they do have a lot of work to do, Jeff. They have to revamp their back seven, and they have some decisions to make on the defensive line with Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham. It's going to be an eventful offseason.
I'm really glad you pointed that out, because sometimes when we say things, right, as reporters, it sounds like we're trying to put bias or prediction into it. I am not trying to sell anybody on the Eagles being anything. I mean, I think they're going to be better, because naturally, I don't think they could get worse than what they were. But you hit the point on the head. These coaches might be great, and they're experienced and they're veteran, and they'll all be on the same page. It doesn't, if the personnel isn't there, and if the personnel doesn't match the scheme, like these aren't players who are familiar or can excel in a scheme that Vic wants to put in, or if they don't take to it, like maybe some of the Miami guys didn't like Vic. I don't know what, you heard Drew Rosenhaus saying that, then it's not going to matter. They may just not be a very good defense. I mean, Howie Roseman has a ton of work to do to remake this secondary, this linebacker unit, and bolster up the front line. So I'm glad you pointed that out, because all we can sit here and tell you is the coaching staff looks more experienced and look better. What happens from here till the start of the season, well, that's not something we can analyze yet, because we don't know what's going to happen, and there's nothing guaranteed. It's just, you like the feel of experienced veteran coaches who have all coached the same system before. That should at least give you a defense that communicates well and understands its roles. Whether they carry out these roles, that's
what I mean.
That remains to be seen.
I'm throwing caution to the wind. Look, if you're a chef and you don't have the necessary ingredients, the meal's not going to be very good. So it's going to take a lot of work. But I mean, there is a path to them being able to rectify some of their shortcomings.
Absolutely. All right, let's pivot to offense. There were no moves announced or reports of any moves that we know of on offense, other than we know Kellen Moore is in and Doug Nussmeier is his quarterbacks coach. I know you've spoken to some people about Moore and Nussmeier. What kind of feedback have you gotten?
Well, more, you're going to see a lot more 11 personnel, quarterback under center, which is a new wrinkle. But the third receiver is going to be a much more of a focal point than it has been in the past. He's going to utilize the short to intermediary levels of the field, utilize the running back in the passing game. And by the way, there's a misconception that Kellen Moore is averse to running the football. 3 out of his 5 years, I believe, 3 years in Dallas, he had 1,000-yard rusher. Zeke Elliott in his first year was 5th in the NFL in carries. Then he went to 7th and 10th, and then and then I think he went to like 12th, but he only played in 15 games. So they are getting opportunities. Now, are they going to be like the Steelers of old with Jerome Bettis pound the football? No, absolutely not. But you're going to see a much more balanced, aggressive attack style offense that's going to implement a lot more optionality. You're not just going to see them run through 3 different players. You're going to see 5 or 6 different guys get the football on a given game. And as far as Nussmeier, look at his track record of success. I mean, you look at Dak, you look at Justin Herbert last season, didn't really meet expectations, but I thought he did a nice job getting Cooper Rush up to play in 2022, did some good things there. Look at the college level. AJ McCarron, Jake Locker. Jake Locker was a first-round pick. A lot of folks forget that. So I mean, he has a track record of success. So he's going to be someone that is his sole focus is to rectify Jalen Hurts' down 2023 and bring him back to prominence.
Yes. By the way, I already predict myself accidentally calling him Doug Neuheisel instead of Nussmeier because they were both at Washington.
Rich Neuheisel.
Yeah, I'm going to make that mistake at least more than 3 or 4 times throughout the year. I agree with you, and I also, look, he has a tight ends coach background too before with Dallas, and we know that tight ends have done well in Dallas under Kellen Moore, starting with Dalton Schultz, right? Jake Ferguson obviously was not coached by him last year, but Jake Ferguson was under his tutelage 2 years ago before he came into his own last year. And then, as we mentioned with the Chargers, they didn't have like a guy like Jake Ferguson or a guy like Travis Kelce, but in the red zone, he got pretty good usage out of his tight ends. Kellen Moore did, and Doug Nussmeier having coached that position. So there's no question one of the things the Eagles need to do better in 2024 is get the ball to Dallas Goedert and exploit the middle of the field more. I would love to see a return to Dallas Goedert getting the ball on those tunnel screens, which 2 years ago were great, but last year just seemed to fall by the wayside. But I do believe that this coaching staff will be tasked not only with giving a better downfield attack, being ready for the blitz, but also what goes in hand with being ready for the blitz and getting the ball out quickly is figuring out ways to get the ball to your tight end.
Yeah, and develop a third receiver, right? I mean, I think that's an optimal spot to get a low cost free agent, draft a guy on a day 3, maybe a Luke McCaffrey from Rice. You're not going to invest heavily in that because you have other areas that need attention, more pertinent attention. And I mean, I think that Britton Covey deserves an opportunity to carve out a role on offense. I thought he did some really good things, and I think his short area quickness can affect spacing, which is going to allow more room for AJ and Devontae to operate. I mean, why not? I mean, those screens that they were throwing to Julio and Quez would have been more optimal for a player like Olamide Zaccheaus and Britton Covey, who are good in space and have that short area quickness. But
sure. I'm wondering if Britton Covey has that Cole Beasley third receiver in Dallas kind of skill set. Not as big as Cole. I mean, not too many receivers are as small as Britton Covey, but you're right. He does have the short area burst, and with uncertainty about whether any of those other 3 guys, Olamide Zaccheaus, Julio Jones, and Quez Watkins, come back, at very least he's under contract, so he's going to get a chance to showcase himself in his 3rd year. And what he can do as a slot receiver. So that'll be I think that's going to be something that we're going to look at more so in OTAs and training camp this year than we did. Because the first 2 years were like, he's a punt returner. He's going to be returning punts. But now I think that you're in year 3. I think he's an undrafted pick, right? So it's really kind of a contract. Yeah. A restricted free agent year for him. And we'll see what we get. I know he has a lot.
he has more to offer, and I get the sense that other players, receivers, know that as well. So I'm interested to see if he's able to capitalize on, you know, the shortage of numbers there.
Sure. All right, I want to just let everybody know on our website, insidethebirds.com, we had our analytics reporter, Sam Finkel, do a analytical or database breakdown of Kellen Moore's offense, right? And it goes into, as a coordinator, how many points he has scored compared to the league average and compared to the Eagles average over the last 3 years. And then also it compares his track record of his pass run ratio and his offense's ability to handle the blitz, basically from a yards per attempt and completion percentage standpoint. And again, it compares it to the league average and it compares it to the Eagles average. And it's a really good story. It's very telltale about what the Eagles are expecting by bringing in Kellen Moore. So I would like everybody to check that out on insidethebirds.com right now. All right, we're going to we're going to discuss the Super Bowl coming up here on Sunday a little bit and how these teams are built. We'll discuss how that ties in with the Philadelphia Eagles. First, I want to remind everybody, whether your resolution is to save money, eat better, or just stress less, HelloFresh is here to help you do all three. So say hello to your most delicious year yet with fresh ingredients and chef-crafted recipes at a price you're going to love. It's delivered right to your door. So you've all resolved to actually sit down and eat dinner around the table, right? I mean, we all think we're going to do that. But what happens when you look at your schedule and you're running around like me and Andrew are all the time? You don't have time to sit down at the table. That's when you turn to HelloFresh's lineup of quick and easy meals. It includes their 15-minute recipes that are designed to help you minimize mealtime stress. I tell you, every time I make a HelloFresh meal, whether it's a quick and easy meal or one of their regular types, I'm just blown away by the freshness, the taste, and the overall quality. And again, they make meals for everybody. If you love meat, chicken, seafood, if you're a vegetarian, if you want to have a different tasting meal each day of the week, then you can pop in 5 different HelloFresh meals and they won't taste the same. Now, check this deal out. If you go to HelloFresh.com/Eagles free and you use that code Eagles free, all one word, you'll get a free breakfast for life. That is 1 breakfast item per box while you have an active subscription. So that is free breakfast for life at HelloFresh.com/Eagles free, one word, EAGLESFREE, and then use that same promo code Eagles free. Act now for America's #1 meal kit. So the one thing I don't like to do, Andrew, is say, hey, you see these two teams in the Super Bowl? Like they do everything right. So everybody should emulate them, because sometimes you turn on different, shows and outlets and you hear that. And it's like, oh, please, this team has the greatest quarterback I've ever seen. Let's also like take that into account. They didn't just build right. They struck gold on the QB, and sometimes that masks a lot of deficiencies. But I do think that there's something that stands out about the coaching staffs of these teams that you look at what the Eagles are doing now and you say, yeah, that makes sense. The 49ers, Andrew, they lost a really good defensive coordinator. So good that he wound up being, was he coach of the year? Was DeMeco Ryans coach of the year? He was, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Maybe it hasn't been announced. It's either going to be him or Kevin Stefanski.
I feel like it's not announced yet.
All right. Well, a lot of people think he should be coach of the year, and I certainly wouldn't argue with it. But so they lose DeMeco Ryans. They've got this team that they think is ready to win a Super Bowl, that as long as they stay healthy. They don't just promote from within for a guy who hasn't run a room before, right? They have an opportunity to go out and get Steve Wilks, who has been a successful defensive coordinator. He's been a head coach in the league. So he's run plenty of rooms. He's had the spotlight on him. He's ready for that moment. So they don't waste time. They bring in Steve Wilks, which it's hard to do that, right? It's hard to go outside your building when you've been grooming talent, but when you got a guy like that, you want to get him. So I think that that's sort of an example of, getting the right guy. That's what the Chiefs did. And then Andy Reid was building up behind Alex Smith until he got Patrick Mahomes, and they were building it up. Patrick Mahomes was scoring points, but they wouldn't get over the hump until they changed their defensive coordinator from Bob Sutton, who was running a 3-4 there for Andy for a little while. And then he scrapped it and he hires Steve Spagnuolo. He goes with the experienced candidate, a guy who had won a ring as a defensive coordinator for the Giants and beat the best team in football, the Patriots record-setting team in the process. And then he was a head coach. He wasn't a good head coach by his record, but again, he had that experience. He's ready for the moment. And you look at the Chiefs now, and there's no question that their defense carries their team
Yeah.
at times. So it kind of makes you reflect on the Eagles and think about, again, when they needed to find coaches to replace coaches last year, they probably didn't do as thorough of a job as they should. I know they got good recommendations on Desai. Obviously, you want to promote Brian Johnson because he was there, but in doing that, right, you made Alex Tanney promote to quarterbacks coach, and he had never led a room. So I wonder if the Eagles see this and they think, if this happens to us again, if we lose Kellen Moore and Vic after a good season next year, we got to make sure we don't make the same mistakes.
Yeah, I think in that respect, you can look at those two teams and say, you can look at that as a model almost and say there's veteran coaches that have run rooms before. That's sort of like the indication of success. Let's try to get some stability there. And then we have to worry about the personnel. You mentioned the Kansas City Chiefs defense. One thing I think they do really well is they allowed a lot of their young players to take their lumps, but also grow in their roles. You look at Jalen Watson, you look at Trent McDuffie, look at L'Jarius Sneed. The Eagles haven't really done that, and a lot of fans having afforded some of these young players the opportunity to kind of make their mistakes and grow from that without chalking that up to, I guess they just can't play. I mean, I think you need that. That's all it needs to be baked into it when you're putting a young player out there. Kansas City stuck with that, and they have a lot of building block pieces, and you can use that as a template for the Eagles, because right now I think Kansas City's back end matches up quite well with San Francisco offense. So I think it's going to be a really good chess match, and I'm interested to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And don't let me finish this podcast without getting your Super Bowl prediction. Adam and I will do ours on Friday, but want to get yours. And then the last thing I wanted to bring to light was from a team building standpoint, and I really wanted to get your view on this, especially as being someone dialed into the draft the way you are. I think the Chiefs and the Niners have done an excellent job finding really good talent in day two, specifically second and third round, at positions that I think are important to hit in the second and third round. What I mean is, like, we know, I think these teams are like the Eagles. They want to build in the trenches. They want stars in the trenches, right? So you're going to see a lot of first round. You're going to see Trent Williams. You're going to see George Karlaftis. You're going to see, I mean, in the past, it was guys like Frank Clark, Bosa, right? You're going to see just a bunch of studs in the trenches because that's how teams build. Both of these teams have done a really nice job, though, of getting what the NFL now views as good players to get in the second and third round, because they don't have to be your stars, but they've got to be really good role players, right? And if you look at linebacker, safety, those positions that a lot of teams, not just the Eagles, don't take in the first round, but want to get in the second and third round because that's where they feel the value matches the talent. Look at the Chiefs linebackers, right? I mean, it's Nick Bolton. He was a second round pick, was he not?
Yeah, Willie Gay. Willie Gay was a third, I believe. So you have to hit on those. I mean, the Eagles have tried. I mean, the jury's out on Nakobe Dean. I think he deserves another opportunity to see if he's able to carve out put his stamp on a starting role. But Davion Taylor just a few years ago was another player that they swung and missed on. I mean, they have tried. But yeah, I mean, you have to use that as a template. If you look across the NFL, Jeff, as you know, most of the rosters are comprised of second, third, and fourth round picks. To not hit on those, I mean, you're doing yourself a tremendous disservice. So I think, I mean, day 2 and day 3 are my favorite days of the draft, because that's where you're really able to find value. That's where a lot of the players that I watched in college have really jumped off tape, and I'm able to I do a lot of scouting on those particular players. Everyone knows about the first round players, the blue chip guys, but the roster is mostly comprised of those second, third, and fourth rounders.
And I think when you're taking those linebackers and safeties in the second round, especially, you're taking players that you have because the second round becomes like a 50-50 proposition. It really does. It might even be lower on the hit rate. But when you start investing second round picks in guys who trend heavier toward going to be a hit, because maybe the one thing they lack compared to the first rounders is they're not 6'6", they're 6'4", right? Or they're hand side, but they've got great instincts. Like Nick Bolton was such a great pick. Everybody knew Nick Bolton coming out of Missouri was going to play really good NFL football, even though he wasn't 6'4". He's not Fred Warner size. He's short, but he's rangy. He's smart. He's instincts. I was hoping the Eagles took him because I thought he would be good for them. I mean, that the Logan Wilsons of the world, right? Like the ones that you know are going to play because it's not about their ability. You don't worry about translation. You just know that they don't have the quote unquote 4.4 speed for a linebacker, 4.5 speed for a linebacker, or the gigantic hands, but you know they can play. And you just look at the Eagles over the last 5 years. I think the second and third round have hurt them at times, because they're either falling back on the type of guys they're going to take. Tyler Steen, offensive lineman. Landon Dickerson, I can't complain. I mean, he certainly has been a really good pick. And so we'll see about Cam Jurgens. I can't call him a hit. I can't call him a miss. We're going to see. But these are like Eagles identity type players, but Nakobe Dean, we have to find out. Milton Williams has been a good player. I can't knock him in the third round, but was there a linebacker or a safety there who can be giving you 3 down play right now as opposed to rotational play? I think it's a good question. You go to 2020, obviously they got Jalen Hurts in the second round. They didn't take Jeremy Chin on their board, but then Davion Taylor just killing them right there. A third round pick that's some teams had a rookie undrafted free agent grade on.
Yeah, and you go back to 2019.
I
mean, we could relitigate the Ortega-Whiteside, but Juan Thornhill, this is a player that I reported that Tim Houck, their safeties coach, went to Virginia to put him through a private workout. So they obviously, there's a lot of interest there, and he was there for the taking, as was a lot of players that are capable playmakers right now, and they didn't take them. So to your point, they've had opportunities, they just haven't identified the right player. Now it's going to be heavily scrutinized this year because you have a decent amount of picks and you have a lot of holes, so you can ill afford to swing and miss on a lot of those picks.
Do you think the Eagles absolutely need to come out of day 2, meaning first, second, and third round, right, with a linebacker or a safety?
I do. And you know why I think that they're going to have to is because Vic Fangio likely, I'm not reporting anything, but he probably doesn't take that job without assurance that, hey, we're going to work hard to make sure that you have what you need at linebacker and safety, because those are key components for him running his defense. What they had last season would not be good enough. I mean, it wasn't good enough, but it wouldn't be good enough for Vic Fangio if that was the agreement. He would say, nah, no dice. So I think right now you're going to see them be able to invest. Now, not a first rounder, but second rounder, third rounder. There's going to be talent there that can step right in. Mm-hmm. And for those hoping that, writing off Nakobe Dean, I should say, I think he'll probably still have an opportunity to start, probably be a number 2. But I think you can certainly find a starter opposite him that's going to be more of a bona fide playmaker and an impact player at that second level.
Yeah. Howie had a bad offseason last offseason. There's just no 2 ways about it. I mean, it's one thing to let players go. He's been good at that. He's been good at patching holes, but last year was not his best. I think he knows that. I think he'll be motivated to make sure he hits on it. But I wish we could get some truth serum in him and ask him why he felt that Terrell Edmunds, who the Steelers had for 5 years and was just an okay player for them, was going to come in here and, be a starter. He didn't. He wound up not even starting coming out of training camp because Justin Evans started out of necessity because he could cover a little better. But Justin Evans, as we talked about last year, missed 3 straight years from an injury. What made Howie think he was going to stay healthy? And you can't rely on a rookie third round pick, Sidney Brown, who showed glimpses of a guy who could probably play in this league. You just can't rely on that. And now he's going to be coming back from a knee injury. And then, the linebacker situation was Nick Morrow and Nakobe Dean. That when you just had the best linebacker play you've had in a while in TJ Edwards and Kaiser White, to just let it walk and think that, all right, we got Nakobe. I can understand thinking Nakobe Dean was ready based on what he was, but then not really having anything back, plan B. You signed Cunningham off the street. He did play well, but it was still off the street. He also got hurt. You're relying on Ben Van Sumeren at one point. It just boggles my mind that he did such a good job 2 years before and in the first Super Bowl run of just depth, stockpiling depth, guys who can play, finding every area. Chris Long, right? Patrick Robinson, Corey Graham, and then this past offseason, he was like, yeah, let's go with Terrell Edmunds, Justin Evans, and Nick Morrow. That sort of boggles my mind because he knew the window was open, man. I don't know.
I think if you're trying to rationalize from Howie's perspective, he's probably thinking, hey, we went to the Super Bowl with an undrafted free agent and a bargain signing at linebacker and Kaiser White and TJ Edwards. We had Marcus Epps starting at safety. He wasn't, he was a 6th-round pick that we got off waivers, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And we had CJ Gardner-Johnson on a trade. So I think that he felt that he could, lightning would strike twice and that he could patch it together like that. And while cutting corners, and it catches up to you, especially when there's leaks and there's too many leaks and you're trying to just patch it together. I mean, it just becomes too much, and then the dam breaks.
Yes. Remember like the old cartoons where like the guy would like try to cover up the hole from the dam break with his hand, and then there would be another hole and they would do that, and then he would use his right leg to cover that, and then the left leg, and then all of a sudden
that's exactly that's what I was trying to depict there, but that's what it felt like.
Well, that's what it was for Howie. All right, well, we'll see if he has a better offseason. All right, that was good discussion there. I want to move into your mock draft a little bit and talk about some of the prospects from the Senior Bowl. And it's not the East West? Is it called the East West, or is it now just called
the Shrine Bowl? Yeah,
right, the Shrine Bowl. We'll get into that as well. First, I want to remind everybody that losing sucks, and trying to figure out what the Eagles are going to do all offseason while other teams are playing in the Super Bowl, that sucks. But you know what is the worst feeling of all is trying to find good tickets online. But not if you have the Game Time app. It's the fast, easy way to buy tickets for sporting events, concerts, theater shows near you. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. And right now, on the Game Time app, you're just 2 taps away from tickets to any local sports teams, any college teams, comedy shows, concerts, whatever you want to say. The best part is that Game Time offers event cancellation protection and job loss protection. It's the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. They've got the all-in prices that show you the total up front, and you get to see the view from your seat right there on the app. It's crystal clear. It's wonderful. You know exactly what you're getting when you get to checkout. Game Time's also obsessed with helping you save money. They've got zone deals that let you pick the section while Game Time picks the seats for the best savings. And then there's the Game Time guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, then Game Time credits you 110% of the difference. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use code BIRDS for $20 off your first purchase. BIRDS, BIRDS. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the redeem code BIRDS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Andrew, let's get into your mock draft. You said you made some people upset with your first round selection. Let's not listen. I want people to read the story and get everything. So we're not going to go through pick by pick here, but
No.
Obviously you chose an offensive tackle in the first round. One that I think I saw him at the Senior Bowl, right? He was there, right?
Yeah, Tyler Guyton. Yeah.
Tyler Guyton, yeah, from Oklahoma, which happens to be the same university where the Eagles found Lane Johnson. We're working on about a decade ago. So what did you like about Guyton, and why would you project him to the Eagles in the first round?
Well, he moves really well. He's athletic. He fits the bill of what the Eagles look for in an offensive lineman. He has a relationship with Lane Johnson. He has the pedigree. And I think that, he has the size. I don't know if he could slide in and play guard as a rookie, should they need somebody to step in and play right guard if Cam Jurgens had to play center. But my thought process was the Eagles are a team that always looks ahead. And I think right now, when you see Lane Johnson at 34 years old, you see there's going to be a lot of quality tackles at that back end of the first round if the board falls the way that I and many envision it to. So I think their value is going to be too much to pass up. And that's where I saw the fit. You get him to learn behind Lane for 1-2 years or so, and then you have Jeff Stoutland there to kind of guide you along. And then next year or the year after, you're able to kind of step right in there, plug in, and the Eagles won't miss a beat, because then you're going to have Cam Jurgens, Mailata, Landon Dickerson. They're going to have a lot of young players ready to kind of move forward without having to rebuild the offensive line and take a step back. So that was kind of my thought process there.
Yeah, no, you hit it on the head. The Eagles, with offensive and defensive line especially, draft early, right? They drafted Lane Johnson to be a left tackle. They were going to figure to start him at right tackle. Damn thing is, Jason Peters just played until he was 327. So he might still playing. Maybe he'll play next year. He was with Seattle this last year. So he just stayed at right tackle and became the game's best right tackle. They drafted Cam Jurgens a year early. He sat all year. Then he played right guard last year in year number 2, and he'll take over center when Jason Kelsey tells everybody he's going to retire if that happens, right? So they drafted Landon Dickerson a year early because they had Brandon Brooks and Isaac Seumalo, but one of them got hurt or both of them got hurt, and he wound up getting in there as a rookie. But again, that wasn't a sure shot. He was drafted early. Look at the defensive line. Fletcher Cox. They had 2 starting defensive tackles when Cox was drafted. I don't remember who, but I don't think Cox
I think it might have been Mike Patterson and
I mean, like Derek Landry. I don't know.
who knows? Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Nolan Smith. You know, they've got Josh Sweat and they've got Hassan Reddick. So Nolan Smith had to work his way up. He's a first round pick. So it makes a lot of sense. And I know people were like, but with all the needs, why would you draft an offensive tackle? You got to remember, A, it's just a mock draft. We don't know they're really going to draft an offensive tackle. But B, more importantly, B, is that between now and the end of free agency, Howie Roseman very likely will continue his pattern of trying to shore up immediate holes with free agents and trades, and so that he can draft for the future, which is what teams are supposed to do. You're supposed to draft the best available player and draft guys who are going to be your building blocks. If you rely on rookies to just step in and be your savior at a position, you're in trouble because those guys can get hurt. They cannot translate. You're not supposed to draft that way. So that's
and my question to you or to anyone would be, who would you draft at 22 then? Quinyon Mitchell might not be there. Terry Arnold, the Alabama corner, is probably going to go even higher than that. Coy McKinstry, that might be your reach there at 22 right now. If you're looking at value, pure value, it would be offensive line. They're not going to take a receiver likely. They're not likely to take a safety or a linebacker there. So, I mean, who else would you take there?
No, I think you just crushed it. The Eagles are big, and a lot of teams are on not just positions that they value, but the value in the draft. This is a strong offensive tackle draft. I think we'll probably see, or this is early, but 6 to 7 offensive tackles. You know, there's your guy that you just talked about from Oklahoma, Guyton. There's Olu Fashanu from Penn State.
J.C. Latham from Alabama.
There's the kid from Oregon State, who's probably going to be a top 10 pick. There's the kid from BYU. I'm terrible with names, so I'm just going to say kid from this school and kid from that school. So that's 5 right there that we mentioned. And I know there's another, either an Ohio State guy or a Michigan guy. I think
there's Amarius Mims from Georgia.
Mims from Georgia. Exactly. Right.
Right. So that's what I mean. There's going to be so much value there that knowing the Eagles, that's going to be awfully hard to pass up.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. And you're right. If it's not a tackle, corner will probably have good value there. After watching Quinyon Mitchell at the Senior Bowl, man, if the Eagles could figure out a way to get him, I think that they'd be really, really happy. We'll talk about that in a second, but there will be some value at corner. And, you know, a couple of years ago, if it wasn't Jordan Davis, I was told it would have been Trent McDuffie, and he'd look good as an Eagle right now. Well, at least the way Steve Spagnuolo uses him, who knows how he would have looked in last year.
I like Trent McDuffie a lot, man. I had a great chat with him at the Super Bowl too.
Yeah, good.
Really, really smart player. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, it's about time now because it's been since 2002 since the Eagles have used a first round pick on a cornerback.
Lito and Sheldon. Well, Lito in the first, Sheldon in the second.
That's right. I also think Howie knows that he's going to need to rebuild this thing, and he'll be looking out there and seeing if there are anybody available along with that. So, yeah. So that was your. So we're not going to go through your whole mock draft. I want people to read it. It's got some fascinating prospects. But you just tell me, after Guyton being the first round pick, which pick did you kind of look at in your whole mock and be like, yes, I love this in this round for the Eagles?
I'll say running back in the 4th round.
Mm-hmm.
I had him going Isaiah Davis from South Dakota State. I really like him as between the tackles bruiser. He would complement ideally someone like DeAndre Swift or a pass catching running back. Take your pick. Maybe they find one in free agency that they like. They need to add a power element there. I think that was something that's been sorely lacking since probably, Jordan Howard, I would say. So, I mean, I think it's time. And they're not going to take a running back high, but I think right there, it's not a strong running back class anyway. That right there would be a prime spot to take someone like that. and he does have some burst and wiggle too. So that to me would be a good fit.
Okay, was Isaiah Davis at this one of
Yes,
the
he's
games?
Senior Bowl. He's Senior Bowl.
I thought so. I think he was wearing 28, if I'm not mistaken, in the practices. I could be wrong about that, but he is somebody that flashed to me as far as being, good move, good little explosion in him, good wiggle. So I like that. You had him going to the Eagles in the 5th round at 159. I mean,
Oh,
look,
right.
the
It was
guy,
at the fifth. It was the fifth round, right?
yeah,
And then
5th round.
and Ennis Rakestraw Jr., the corner from Missouri, in the 2nd round. I mean, that's a great spot to get a corner. You talk about value in the 1st round, right there. Long corner, lean, but I think that he has so much potential. A plug and play starter, one of the more highly intelligent corners in this class, and I think that the learning curve for him, it wouldn't be anything too drastic. Good balls. I think he has potential to be a ball hawk on the back end there. So that's somebody to keep an eye on as well. TJ Tampa, I was torn on him because obviously, well, one, he's a physical player, 6'1", 198, super physical, has some potential for in terms of ball skills, isn't overly fluid. That's the one area I'm looking to see how he does the combine. Norristown, Pennsylvania native, ended up moving to St. Petersburg, and he has the Iowa State. So there's the Matt Campbell connection there with Nick Sirianni. So
Yeah, and by the way, you mentioned Quinyon Mitchell before. There's a connection there as well. His coach at Toledo, Jason Candle, was Nick Sirianni's teammate at Mount
right,
Union. So
yep.
no one's going to have more information on Quinyon Mitchell, who already checks all the boxes. Great kid. He's going to run the 4.3s. He's long. Man, I'm telling you, if the Eagles get Quinyon Mitchell, it's going to be like, for those who have pined for the Eagles to get a running back, like elite 1st round, like, oh, you're going to hear the music play. It's going to be palpable, as Sean decided once said.
That's going to be. I mean, Quinyon Mitchell, right now his stock is skyrocketing right now. Before the Senior Bowl, I thought that was right. That was the sweet spot right there.
Mhm.
Still too early to say, but he may have played his way out of the Eagles' range there. But man, what a you talk about plug and play, difference maker on the back end. Pair him with someone like a Keely Ringo, and you get Slay there maybe for another year to learn from. You start to piece together that back end in a big way.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, we're gonna just wrap this up. I want to pause real quick to hear a word from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schiller, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you stop into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam just sent you. You will get a great deal. All right, so let's close it out. The Shrine Bowl is over, the Senior Bowl is over. We did mention some of the names there, but this is your time to shine as far as these kind of prospects. Who's jumping out at you from the All-Star exhibition circuit? Is there a 3rd All-Star game that's like the NFLPA games that still exist?
And there's the Hula Bowl as
The
well.
Hula, that's right. But it's not in Hawaii anymore, right? Didn't they move it?
Yeah, they moved that. I want to say, I don't know, Florida. I have no idea.
Charlotte
I
or
don't
something crazy like that. I don't know. Yeah.
But yeah. So Shrine Bowl quickly. Jarius Monroe, defensive back from Tulane, someone I like. Muhammad Kamara, pass rusher from Colorado State, doesn't necessarily have the build that you would like. I think he's a little light, but he does offer some good flash and bend off the edge. Really athletic player. Could be a player that maybe you look for on day 3. The Eagles need to bolster their pass rush. Frank Gore Jr., Southern Mississippi running back. That's another player that could fit when you look at the Eagles' need and what he can provide to the backfield. He would complement and fill that role as a power running back. But look at the Senior Bowl where you just were, Jeff. Dylan Laube, the running back from New Hampshire, dual threat running back. I think he has a lot to offer. I think he'd be a difference maker in Kellen Moore's offense. I've gotten a lot of information on him over the past couple weeks. Luke McCaffrey, we mentioned 3rd receiver, 6'2", 200 pounds, former quarterback, only played receiver for 2 years. Tremendous route runner, really good feel for finding openings in zone, tough, good body control. That's exactly what the Eagles need operating from their 3rd receiver role. And then the linebacker, Trevin Wallace from Kentucky, is a player that I really liked. I'm not sure if you got a chance to see him much at the Senior Bowl, but 6'2", 240, closes extremely quickly, violent finisher, flows sideline to sideline. That's the guy I had mocked at, in the third round at pick 97. Not necessarily a household name, but he certainly will be after the combine.
Yeah, yeah, no. I think what stood out to me from just talking to people and being at the Senior Bowl, knowing with the other exhibition games, is that this draft will be loaded with, we mentioned offensive tackles, some good corners, so that's good. And I wanted to get your thought on it. It seems like this year, Andrew, you could see some decent quarterbacks go like second, third round guys. I'm talking like Devin Leary from Kentucky,
Sure.
Spencer Rattler, who wound up being the Senior Bowl MVP, and at one time was, like a 5-star prospect. Remember, he lost his job at Oklahoma, right, to Caleb Williams, who is either going to be the number 1 or number 2 pick. There's another quarterback, the Tulane quarterback, Pratt, right?
Michael Pratt, yeah.
Michael Pratt, who can. It feels like to me that there's going to be a bunch of quarterbacks who teams think can be a year or two can be a pretty good backup that you can get in the second or third round. Kind of like the way you saw Aiden O'Connell step in, and he's a guy
Sure,
who last year I think he was just a shrine guy. He wasn't even a Senior Bowl guy or anything like that. But I feel like that there's more of those this year than there have been in the past.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued with Spencer Rattler. I know some may roll their eyes because he didn't live up to expectations in college. He's been an erratic player, but I think that teams may view him differently than the outsiders may. And he had a good Senior Bowl, obviously, but I think that if he's able to throw at the combine and if he checks off some boxes in terms of interviews, you're talking about a second or a third round pick. I think that he's being a little bit undervalued here, given his, I mean, it's hard to say given his pedigree, but I think he is being overlooked a little bit. Joe Milton from Tennessee is a player who has really good size, good, traits, a little raw, but I think that that's going to be intriguing on a day 3, not a day 2, but a day 3 guy that if you can get him in there and develop him, you may have something as a long-term backup and maybe even an eventual starter.
Yeah, I mean, and look at Bo Nix and Michael Penix. Like I sort of get the feeling Penix has played himself into first round contention. Maybe not 10 to 15, but it wouldn't totally shock me if he didn't, if he was more high second round. And same thing with Nix. I think teams are going to look at Nix and say, this guy checks off almost every single way. He's just not the physical specimen like an Anthony Richardson, right? Or like Carson Wentz, but like you might see like a Derek Carr type of player, and people can roll their eyes, like you said, a joke, but Derek Carr has won double-digit games in the NFL before as a guy who was picked in what round? When he's a second round pick, right?
Derek Carr was a second round pick.
Yeah, I mean, teams are always looking for these type of guys. You may not want to build your franchise around it, but you want that guy in your room to be there in case your starter goes down. And man, maybe you get something out. Maybe he's a leader. Maybe he's got those intangibles like a Jalen Hurts or a Tony Romo that you didn't get him in the first round, but a guy can play. He's seen it all. He spent many years. He's good accuracy. He's good at processing. Like it just seems like this year there are going to be a lot of those guys available, and you don't have to go in the top 10 to get them. And you might either wind up with a good quarterback or a really, really good backup.
Now, Jeff, was there a quarterback that stood out to you at the Senior Bowl in particular?
Yeah, Andrew, trust me, you didn't. I know you like to go to the Senior Bowl. You didn't miss much, my friend. The afternoon, I forget which team practiced in the afternoon, whether it was the American or the National. It was the one without. So for some reason, they put Nix and Penix on the same team. So those guys had the morning practices. They were pretty good. I wouldn't say spectacular. The afternoon quarterbacks really struggled. Pratt was okay, right? Pratt from Tulane.
Yeah.
They always have to have a South Alabama guy there because that's the host site. Now, 2 years ago, they had Jalen Tolbert there, but that was legit. As we know, the Cowboys drafted.
Yeah, I like Jalen Tolbert coming out.
Good player, right? This year, they had the quarterback there, and he was okay. I think I'm being kind. And not only that, I felt like all the quarterbacks were really checking it down, which surprised me. And I'm talking about the afternoon practice mostly. It surprised me because you can't blitz and you can only play man, and you're basically playing cover 1 or cover 3. So like when you know that, then you know where the seams and the voids are. So I was surprised to see so many checkdowns from the quarterbacks. But yeah, I can't say I thought Penix and Nix looked pretty good. they were clearly the best QBs there. But other than that, nobody really jumped off the page.
Yeah, no surprise given the reports that I saw. But, I was kind of curious. I think Spencer Rattler is a guy to keep an eye on as we move towards the combine, the next phase of the pre-draft process. Not suggesting that he's going to be a bona fide, upper echelon quarterback or anything like that. But I think he may start to creep up a little bit.
Yeah, I wouldn't surprise me. I remember he had all the traits, and he was and I mean, he's not a runner, but he's a guy who can get out of the pocket. But he was the guy at Oklahoma, and a 5-star this and that, and supposed to be the next great Oklahoma quarterback after Jalen Hurts, right?
Yeah.
But then Caleb Williams came along and stole the show there. Andrew, great stuff. It's been fun. I hope you enjoyed it. We will certainly have you back on soon. You are a fantastic. You are the Matt Stairs of pinch hitters. I'll tell you that. For all
That's a big time compliment, man.
yeah, that is you. So we appreciate you hopping on, and Adam will be back Friday. We'll preview the Super Bowl a little bit. We'll give a little more intel and update anybody on any developments with the Eagles coaching staff or any other moves. So appreciate everybody for listening. That's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the Birds. Be sure to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.